The Great Academy of the Stars was a place where many young minds from different worlds came to learn. Its shining halls were filled with voices of students from dozens of species. Some had wings, some had shining skin, some moved on more than 2 legs. Among all of them walked a human boy named Arun. Humans were new to the academy, and many students looked at them with curiosity. Some whispered that humans were reckless, while others said they were too emotional. Arun heard these things, but he did not let them trouble his heart. He had come to learn, and nothing would stop him from giving his best. On the first day of the advanced energy class, the teacher gave each student a partner. Together they would build a device that joined 2 different energy forms into one stable current. This was not easy work, and many students looked nervous. When the teacher spoke Arun's name, he waited to hear who would stand with him. The name that followed was Rin. At once, the class grew quiet. Rin belonged to a species known for order and discipline. Her people valued logic above everything. They were respected for their steady hands and sharp minds, but they were also known for being cold. Many said they did not work well with humans, who acted too quickly and trusted their instincts instead of long thought. Rin herself stepped forward, her tall figure moving with grace. Her silver eyes studied Arun in silence. When Arun offered his hand in greeting, she did not take it right away. She only tilted her head slightly, then gave a small nod. That was all. Arun smiled anyway and said it was good to meet her. He decided he would not be discouraged by her quiet way. If they were to succeed, they had to trust each other. Their first meeting at the lab was not easy. The device they had to build required perfect balance between heat energy and wave energy. Rin began to measure each piece with great care, writing long notes before touching any part. Arun, on the other hand, preferred to test things by hand and see how they reacted. When he reached to adjust a panel, Rin quickly stopped him. She said it was dangerous to act without full calculations. Arun tried to explain that sometimes action was faster than waiting, but Rin only shook her head. Hours passed and little progress was made. Other pairs were already shaping their projects while Arun and Rin still argued about the right method. Arun felt a small fire of frustration, but he kept his voice calm. He reminded himself that Rin had her own way, and maybe her care came from fear of mistakes. Still, he wished she would trust him a little. At last they began a small test. The 2 energy sources hummed as they joined together. For a moment, it seemed their machine would work. But suddenly the current twisted out of balance, and sparks jumped across the wires. A sharp alarm rang out, warning of failure. Most students would have frozen in place, waiting for the teacher to come. Rin herself stood stiff, her eyes wide as the device shook. But Arun did not wait. He grabbed a simple tool from the table and used it to cut the unstable line. At the same time, he redirected the second energy flow into a safe channel. Smoke filled the air for a moment, then the machine grew still. The alarm stopped. Rin stared at him with surprise. He had acted in seconds, faster than any plan could be written. He had risked himself, yet the device was safe. Arun breathed hard from the rush, but he gave a quick laugh and said they had just saved their project from turning into a pile of ashes. The students around them whispered. Some said humans were careless to act so fast. Others admitted that without his quick hands, the device might have been ruined. Rin kept watching him, her silver eyes unblinking. For the first time, she spoke with a softer voice. She asked why he had taken such a risk. Arun answered simply. He said waiting would have meant losing everything, and sometimes you had to trust your sense to act at the right moment. Rin fell quiet, thinking about his words. Her people valued order and planning, but this human had shown another kind of strength. She began to wonder if perhaps his way was not so foolish after all. When the teacher arrived to check on them, the machine was safe, and the project could continue. Arun stood tall, still smiling, while Rin gave him a long look that held something new. That night, as Arun left the academy hall, he thought of his new partner. She was different from him in every way, yet he felt there was something worth discovering in her silence. He did not know it yet, but this was only the beginning of a story that would change not just their project, but also how the academy saw humans forever. The next morning, the academy halls buzzed with the sounds of many voices. Students rushed to their classes, carrying tools, notes, and strange crystals that glowed faintly. Arun walked with steady steps toward the lab, eager to begin the second day of work. He carried a small kit of human-made tools, simple but reliable. When he entered the lab, he found Rin already there. She stood at the table, her long fingers moving over charts filled with precise numbers. She glanced at him but did not greet him with words. Instead, she pointed to the device parts that were neatly arranged in order. Arun smiled. It seemed she had worked hard even before he arrived. He set his tools on the table and said they should try again today, but with both of their methods combined. Rin raised one brow, clearly unsure if his quick style could fit into her careful plans. Still, after yesterday's event, she did not argue right away. They began by checking each part of the energy converter. Rin measured the heat levels with exact precision, while Arun tested the strength of the connectors by hand. Their teamwork was awkward at first. Arun moved too quickly for her taste, and she paused too long for his. But as the hours passed, something changed. She started to follow his words, and he slowed himself enough to listen to her advice. Slowly, their machine began to take shape. By midday, it was time for another test. The other pairs gathered around, curious after the excitement of the previous day. Arun and Rin set their machine on the table. The two energy sources were ready, a crystal that stored heat and a coil that held wave energy. If they joined correctly, the currents would stabilize into a single smooth flow. If not, chaos would return. Arun took a deep breath. He told Rin to guide the numbers, while he would handle the controls. She nodded with hesitation. He placed his hand on the switch and waited for her signal. When she gave a sharp nod, he activated the system. The crystal glowed with fire-red light, and the coil shimmered with faint blue waves. For a moment, the machine hummed with perfect balance. Arun's heart lifted. Perhaps they had succeeded. Then, the flow twisted again. Sparks leapt from the coil, and the glow of the crystal grew too bright. The machine began to shake. The crowd gasped, expecting failure. Arun reacted at once. He grabbed a stabilizer rod from his kit and pressed it against the joint. At the same time, he shouted for Rin to adjust the energy values. Her hands moved quickly over the numbers, her calm voice guiding him. Together, they fought to steady the device. Smoke rose, the glow flared, and the hum grew louder. At last, the machine settled. The two energy forms flowed together into one steady current. The sparks died, the glow softened, and the hum turned into a soft pulse. The crowd of students grew silent. Then, slowly, they began to murmur. A student with scaled skin whispered that the human had risked his life again. Another said no, it was not just risk, it was skill. A third admitted that perhaps humans had faster hands than expected. Rin herself stood still, her silver eyes fixed on the glowing device. She had seen how Arun had trusted her numbers, even while acting so quickly. She realized he had not tried to replace her logic with his instinct. Instead, he had balanced his courage with her precision. When she finally looked at him, she gave a small bow of her head, something rare for her people. Arun only laughed softly and said it was close, maybe too close. But he also said they had done it together, and that was what mattered. Rin answered with quiet words. She admitted she had not believed in his methods, but now she saw his instincts were not just wild guesses. They were a kind of wisdom too. The teacher came forward then, his long robe sweeping across the floor. He studied the steady machine with great interest. He said their device was unstable at first, but their teamwork had saved it. He told the class to learn from them, for sometimes success came not from one mind but from two very different ones working together. When the lesson ended, Arun walked out of the lab with a light step. Other students looked at him differently now. Some still doubted, but others showed respect. For humans, respect was rare in the academy, and Arun felt proud. Rin walked beside him in silence. At last, she spoke softly, almost as if speaking to herself. She said she did not understand how he could move without fear. Arun answered that fear was always there, but acting in spite of fear was what made courage real. Rin looked at him for a long moment. Then she gave a nod, as if she had learned something new. The day ended with their machine glowing faintly on the lab table, a quiet proof of the bond slowly forming between a human boy and his alien partner. What neither of them knew was that this was only the first challenge. Greater trials still waited, and soon they would need more than courage and precision to stand against them. Days passed in the academy, and the great project of the energy converter grew more demanding. Every team worked with focus, trying to perfect their designs before the final day of testing. Arun and Rin returned to the lab each morning, carrying their notes and tools. Their machine stood taller now, with wires glowing faintly and panels humming with energy. Though progress was steady, Arun began to notice something strange about his partner. Whenever the machine powered on, Rin's silver eyes would narrow, and her long fingers would tense against the table. She always double-checked the values, often more than once, and sometimes she even stopped the test before it began. Arun wondered why she looked so uneasy, but she never explained. Her voice remained calm, and her movements precise, yet he could sense a quiet storm behind her silence. One evening, after the class ended and most students had left, Arun decided to stay behind. He sat at the table, sketching small adjustments on his notebook. Rin was still there, standing close to the machine, her eyes fixed on the glow of the crystals. The lab was quiet except for the faint hum of energy. Arun cleared his throat and asked her why she always looked worried during the tests. Rin froze for a moment. Her eyes turned toward him, sharp and guarded. She said it was nothing, only habit. But Arun shook his head. He told her he could see the truth. He said that trust was the key to their work, and without honesty, they could never succeed. For a long while, Rin remained silent. Then, slowly, she spoke. She said her family was known among her people for their great skill in science. For generations, they had served with honor, producing scholars and inventors. Her placement at the academy was not only her own dream but also her family's pride. If she failed, the shame would not fall only on her but on all of them. Arun listened carefully. He had guessed she carried some kind of weight, but he had not known it was this heavy. He leaned forward and told her that failure was not the end of honor, only a step toward growth. But Rin shook her head. Among her people, failure was almost unforgivable. Success was demanded, not requested. That was why she feared every test, every spark, every sign of collapse. Arun thought of his own world. Humans failed often, but they learned from it. They stumbled, they fell, but they always stood again. He told her this. He said failure did not frighten humans because each fall was only another path to rise. Rin listened but did not fully understand. To her, failure was a wall, not a step. Still, Arun placed his hand on the machine and promised her one thing. He said she would not face this alone. If they failed, they would fail together. If they succeeded, it would be because both of them gave everything they had. His words were simple, but they carried weight. Rin stared at him, her silver eyes softer now. No one had ever said such words to her. Her people valued discipline, not promises of loyalty. Yet this human, so new to the academy, had spoken with such conviction. She bowed her head slightly and whispered that she would trust him. The next day, something new happened. During their test, Rin did not hesitate as much. She still measured carefully, but when Arun acted, she followed with steady hands. Their machine hummed stronger, the flow more stable. For the first time, Rin's voice carried a note of confidence. Arun felt proud. Later, as they left the lab, Arun noticed Rin walking beside him more closely than before. She spoke softly, saying she wondered how humans could carry such courage even when the path was uncertain. Arun laughed and answered that perhaps it was because humans had always lived on the edge of danger. From storms to wild beasts to space travel, they had faced many things stronger than them, yet they had survived. Survival had taught them courage. Rin grew quiet, but her eyes shone with thought. She was beginning to see humans differently. They were not reckless children as some claimed. They were a people shaped by struggle, a people who had learned to stand even when the ground shook beneath them. That night, Rin sat alone in her chamber, her mind filled with new questions. For the first time, she wondered if courage was more valuable than perfection. And as she closed her eyes, she remembered the human's words. She would not face this alone. The bond between them had deepened. What began as a reluctant partnership was turning into something stronger, something that might carry them through the trials yet to come. The academy grew more restless with each passing day. Final testing week was drawing near, and every student wanted to prove their project was the best. The long halls buzzed with talk of who might succeed and who might fail. Some students whispered with respect about the human and his alien partner, while others laughed and called it luck. Arun heard the whispers but paid them little mind. He was focused only on the machine and on keeping his promise to Rin. Rin, however, could not ignore the sharp looks she received. Members of her own species passed by with cool stares, as if disappointed that she worked beside a human. She walked tall, her face calm, but Arun noticed the tension in her shoulders. He asked if it troubled her, and she only said their voices did not matter. Yet he knew they did. Her honor was tied to the work, and every whisper cut deeper than she admitted. The next day in the lab, the tension showed itself more clearly. Their machine stood ready for a larger trial, one that required full power from both energy sources. Rin checked the values 3 times, her hands trembling just slightly. Arun gave her a reassuring nod, telling her they would face it together. At last, she agreed to begin. When the power flowed, the machine glowed brighter than ever before. The crystal pulsed with fiery red light, while the coil shimmered with cool blue waves. The two energies joined in the center, sending a low hum through the lab. For a moment, it looked perfect. Students from other tables glanced over, their eyes wide with surprise. But then, without warning, the current began to twist again. The hum grew into a roar, and sparks burst across the wires. Smoke hissed from the panels. Alarms echoed through the lab. Many students stepped back in fear, expecting the device to explode. Rin froze in place, her body rigid, eyes locked on the shaking machine. Arun did not hesitate. He rushed forward, grabbing the side of the device to steady it. The heat burned his palms, but he held firm. He called to Rin, telling her exactly which values to change. At first she did not move, fear holding her like a chain. Arun shouted again, louder this time, his voice steady and commanding. Something in his tone broke through her fear. Her hands began to move, adjusting the flow of the currents. Together they worked, his quick instincts guiding her precise control. Slowly the chaos weakened, the sparks died down, and the machine began to settle. With one final adjustment, the glow leveled into a steady rhythm. The alarm stopped. The lab grew silent except for the soft hum of success. A group of students had gathered near their table, their eyes wide. Some looked impressed, others unsettled. One spoke out, saying it was foolish for a human to risk himself like that. Another answered that it was not foolishness but courage. Soon, whispers spread again, this time filled with a strange mix of respect and unease. Rin finally turned to Arun, her voice low. She admitted she had frozen because she could not bear the thought of failure. Yet he had acted without hesitation, even when danger was near. Arun only smiled and said that fear could not stop them if they faced it together. She looked at him, her silver eyes filled with thought, and gave a small nod. Later that day, however, the whispers grew louder in the halls. Some rival students accused Arun of showing off, claiming he only wanted attention. Others mocked Rin, saying her success was only because of her human partner. Arun tried to ignore them, but he could see the anger in Rin's eyes. Her honor was at stake, and their words struck her deeply. That evening, as they left the lab, a group of students blocked their path. They sneered at the human and asked Rin why she relied on someone so reckless. They said her people would be ashamed. Rin clenched her fists, ready to respond, but Arun placed a calm hand on her arm. He looked at the rivals and said simply that true strength was not in mocking others but in building something greater. Then he walked past them without another word. Rin followed in silence, her anger still burning. Yet she realized Arun's calm reply had carried more weight than any argument. She admired his restraint, for her own people might have answered insult with insult. Humans, it seemed, had their own kind of strength, not only in action but in patience. That night, as Rin sat alone, she thought about the growing storm around them. The Academy was watching, waiting to see if a human could truly stand equal among other species. Their project had become more than a test of skill. It was now a test of courage, honor, and unity. And deep within, she knew the trials ahead would only grow harder. For Arun and Rin, the rising tension was not only in the machine they built but in the eyes of everyone around them. The final days were approaching, and the true test was yet to come. The academy was filled with tension as the days drew closer to the final presentation. Every student worked late into the night, polishing their machines, testing their devices, and hoping for success. Arun and Rin also stayed in the lab longer than before. The glow of their energy converter filled the room as they ran test after test. Though their machine grew stronger, both of them knew it was still not perfect. Arun noticed that Rin seemed restless. Her hands moved quickly over the numbers, her eyes darting to the flow of energy again and again. She was not her usual calm self. One evening, when the lab was almost empty, he asked her why. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. She said there was something about her that she had hidden. Arun tilted his head, waiting. Rin explained that her species carried a rare ability. Some of them could sense energy patterns beyond normal sight, feeling the way currents moved and shifted. She had this ability, but she had never spoken of it to anyone. She feared others would mock her or call her weak, for her people valued discipline and calculation, not instincts. Arun was surprised, but he did not laugh or judge. Instead, he smiled and said it was not weakness at all. He told her that what she carried was a gift. Where numbers ended, her senses could begin. He encouraged her to use it, saying that together they could combine her hidden skill with his courage and creativity. Rin hesitated. Her silver eyes studied him carefully. Then, slowly, she nodded. She closed her eyes and placed her hand above the machine. Arun watched as her face grew calm, almost peaceful. She began to speak softly, describing the flow of the energies as if she could see them dancing in the air. Arun adjusted the controls based on her words, and for the first time, the machine's currents moved smoothly without sparks or alarms. When the test ended, the machine pulsed with a steady light. Arun laughed in triumph, but Rin only stared at the device in silence. She could not believe what had happened. She had feared her ability, yet with Arun's encouragement, it had become their greatest strength. The next day, they tried again with full power. Rin guided the energy flow with her senses, while Arun handled the controls. The machine shone brighter than ever, glowing with perfect balance. Students gathered around, their whispers louder than before. Some were impressed, others jealous, but none could deny that the human and his alien partner had created something remarkable. Rin's rivals, however, did not stay quiet. They muttered that the success was only luck, that a human had no place leading such work. Arun heard them, but he refused to respond with anger. He simply focused on the machine and on Rin. He believed their work would speak louder than any words. That evening, Rin spoke again as they walked through the academy garden. She said she had always carried the weight of honor on her shoulders, but now she felt lighter. Arun had shown her that trust and courage could carry a person as strongly as discipline and order. She admitted she had begun to respect not only his actions but the spirit of his people. Arun smiled, looking up at the stars. He told her that humans had always been underestimated. Many thought of them as reckless dreamers, but it was often those dreams that pushed them forward. He said that maybe the Academy was about to see what humans truly were capable of. Rin fell quiet, but her silence was no longer distant. It was thoughtful, almost warm. She knew he was right. Their project had become more than a test of skill. It was a chance to show that different strengths, when combined, could create something far greater than either alone. In the following days, their bond grew stronger. Arun trusted her guidance without question, and Rin trusted his quick decisions. Where once there had been doubt, now there was unity. Other students began to notice, whispering that perhaps the human was not so reckless after all. Some even admitted that the pair worked better together than any other team in the class. The turning point had come. Rin no longer feared her gift, and Arun had proven that courage was more than impulse. Together they had forged a partnership that blended instinct and logic, creativity and precision. The Academy was watching, and whispers of respect began to spread further each day. What neither of them knew was that danger still waited. Their rivals were not content to watch them rise. In the shadows of the academy halls, plans of sabotage were already being made. The greatest challenge had yet to come, and it would test not only their skills but also their trust in each other. The day of the final presentation arrived, and the academy was alive with noise and excitement. The great hall shone with bright lights, and long rows of machines stood ready. Students from many worlds gathered, their voices rising like a wave. Teachers and scholars from across the galaxy had come to watch. This was not only a test but also a chance for each species to show their brightest minds. Arun and Rin stood beside their machine, its panels polished and its crystals glowing with quiet strength. Arun felt the weight of many eyes on him. Whispers filled the air. Some students said the human would fail, while others spoke of his courage. Rin stood tall, her face calm, but Arun could sense the tension in her shoulders. He reminded her that they had come this far together, and they would finish it together. She gave a small nod, her silver eyes steady. One by one, other teams presented their devices. Machines hummed, flashed, and sparked. Some worked perfectly, while others faltered. The audience judged each one with sharp eyes. At last, the teacher called for Arun and Rin. The hall grew quiet. All attention turned to the human and his alien partner. They began the test. Arun started the controls, while Rin guided the energy with her senses. The crystal glowed red, the coil shimmered blue, and the currents joined in the center. The hum of the machine filled the hall, smooth and strong. For a moment, it looked flawless. But then, without warning, the glow twisted into a harsh glare. The hum turned into a roar, and sparks burst from the wires. Gasps filled the hall. The machine shook violently, threatening to collapse. Arun's heart raced. He knew this was not an accident. Someone had tampered with their device. The rival students stood in the corner, their faces tight with hidden smiles. They had overloaded the energy feeds, hoping to ruin Arun and Rin's work in front of everyone. Rin froze, her eyes wide. The machine roared louder, the glow blinding. Arun did not hesitate. He grabbed the stabilizer and pressed it against the joint, shouting for Rin to trust her senses. She trembled, torn between fear and duty. He called again, his voice clear and steady, telling her that only she could guide the currents. Something in his words reached her. She closed her eyes, blocking out fear, and raised her hands above the machine. She began to describe the energy flow, her voice sharp and certain. Arun followed every word, turning the controls with quick precision. Sparks leapt, smoke filled the air, but together they worked, guiding the wild currents back into order. The hall was silent except for the roaring machine. All eyes were on them, watching the human risk his life beside his alien partner. Arun's hands burned from the heat, sweat ran down his brow, but he never let go. Rin's voice grew stronger, her senses guiding him like a map through the storm. At last, the glow softened. The roar faded into a deep hum. The currents joined into a perfect steady flow. The machine stood tall, shining with balanced light. The hall erupted in gasps, then silence, and finally thunderous applause. Arun stepped back, his chest heaving. His palms were red with heat, but he smiled. Rin looked at him, her silver eyes bright, filled with something more than relief. It was pride. She had faced her fear and used her gift, and he had stood beside her without hesitation. Together they had turned certain failure into triumph. The teacher approached, his voice carrying across the hall. He said their machine was not only stable but also stronger than any other. He praised their unity, saying it was proof that courage and trust could build wonders. He told the crowd that what they had witnessed was more than science. It was a lesson in partnership. The rival students shrank back, their hidden plan now plain to all. The teacher's gaze fell on them, and their shame was clear. No sabotage could erase what the human and his partner had achieved. Rin stood before the crowd, her voice calm but firm. She said their success was not hers alone nor his alone but the result of two minds, two ways of thinking, and two hearts working as one. She bowed her head toward Arun, showing respect not only for him but for all humans. The hall erupted in applause once more. Students from many worlds cheered, teachers nodded in approval, and even the skeptical scholars leaned forward with interest. Arun stood quietly, smiling, but inside his heart swelled with pride. Humanity, once doubted, had proven itself. The big confrontation had passed. They had faced sabotage, fear, and chaos, yet together they had risen above it. What came next would not only change their lives but also the way the Academy and the galaxy saw the human race. The great hall of the Academy still echoed with the sound of applause. Students from many worlds spoke with amazement, and the teachers nodded with pride. Arun stood beside Rin, breathing deeply, his palms sore from the heat of the machine. Rin's silver eyes still shone with quiet strength. Together they had faced the storm, and together they had won. The teacher raised his hand, and the hall grew silent. His voice carried with authority. He declared Arun and Rin's project the most remarkable of all. He said it was not only a machine but a symbol. It showed how two different minds, guided by trust, could create something no one else had imagined. He told the students that courage and loyalty were as important as numbers and calculations. His words fell heavy in the air, and many students bowed their heads in respect. The rivals who had tampered with the device stood off to the side, their faces pale. They could not hide their shame. The teacher ordered them to step forward. He told them their actions were dishonorable and unworthy of the Academy. Their sabotage was seen by all, and their names would now carry disgrace. The crowd murmured, some with anger, some with disappointment. Arun glanced at them but did not gloat. He knew their shame was punishment enough. Rin turned toward him and spoke softly so only he could hear. She said she had never imagined standing in such a moment. She had lived her whole life fearing failure, fearing the judgment of her people. Yet today, with him by her side, she had faced danger and triumphed. She thanked him, her voice sincere. Arun smiled and answered that it was not him alone. They had succeeded together. Then came the moment that no one expected. Rin stepped forward in front of the entire hall. She raised her voice, calm but strong. She said that for many years, her people had doubted the worth of humans. They had called them reckless, unskilled, and unfit for true science. But today she had seen with her own eyes what a human could do. She had seen courage, loyalty, and brilliance. She declared that humans deserved respect and a place among the brightest of the galaxy. The hall erupted with cheers. Students of different species clapped and shouted in approval. Teachers exchanged thoughtful glances, their eyes shining with new respect. Even the strict scholars nodded slowly, acknowledging her words. Arun stood still, stunned by her declaration. He had not expected her to speak for his whole race, yet she had done so with pride. When the applause settled, the teacher spoke again. He said that the Academy had witnessed history. A human and an alien, working as equals, had proven that differences were not weaknesses but strengths. He promised that from this day forward, humans would no longer be seen as mere newcomers. They would be seen as partners in the great work of the stars. After the ceremony, Arun and Rin walked together through the academy gardens. The night sky stretched above them, filled with countless stars. The air was cool and still, and for the first time, Arun felt the weight of what they had achieved. Humanity was no longer in the shadows. A door had been opened. Rin walked quietly beside him. At last, she said that her family's honor was now safe, but more than that, she herself had changed. She no longer feared failure as she once had. She had learned that courage was not the absence of fear but the strength to act despite it. She said that lesson had come from him. Arun shook his head and answered that he had also learned from her. She had shown him the power of patience and precision, the value of careful thought. Without her guidance, his courage alone would not have been enough. He told her that their success belonged to both of them. They stopped near a fountain where the water glowed softly with light. For a moment, they simply stood in silence, watching the stars. Rin turned to him and gave a rare smile. It was small, but it carried warmth. She said that whatever came next, she would always remember the human who had taught her trust. Arun smiled back and said he would always remember the alien who had taught him balance. As the days passed, news of their success spread across the academy and beyond. Humans were spoken of with new respect. Other species began to seek them as partners, curious about their courage and creativity. Arun became a symbol of what humanity could achieve, and Rin became the voice that had carried their worth to the stars. The story of the human student and his alien partner became more than just a tale of a project. It became a lesson, told in the halls of the academy for years to come. It reminded everyone that unity could overcome fear, that trust could defeat doubt, and that even the smallest of voices could change the way worlds saw each other. And so, beneath the endless sky, Arun and Rin walked forward into a future brighter than either had imagined, carrying with them the bond of trust that had turned a simple project into a moment of history.